Good. Hello, everyone. Uh, I just want to thank everyone for making it here. I think first of all, try to get this presentation going. Just 1 second. Here we go. So yeah, thanks everyone for coming. I'm really excited about having Startup X S inviting me on this, and I think this is a really good opportunity to just talk a little bit about the conversation that about product versus building a business. So just 1 second here, I'm gonna get my presentation going. So I'm gonna explain. Okay, good. So thanks again for joining. My name is Jacob Fortu, and this is the second presentation that I'm doing with Startup XS, the second webinar, and I'm just really excited and I'm grateful that you guys were able to make the time to attend this session. So one of the things that that was really exciting to me, and I wanted to have this opportunity to share with you guys, was the importance of building a product versus building a business. And just the last time I was fortunate to come on Startup X, we actually talk about the major pitfalls of building a business, right? And something that was very interesting from the questions I had, the feedback I had from everyone was, this was something that was helpful to them. So one thing that for these webinars I'm really excited about is having these questions asked at the end of the webinars and just having that dialogue. So I'm really grateful to Startup XS for giving me this second opportunity to just talk to you guys about my experience, and and I'll give an introduction about myself later on, and also just sharing these key pointers of what I think is very important for us as entrepreneurs, early stage entrepreneurs, or those who are interested to become entrepreneurs, business owners in the future, and just understanding the concept of entrepreneurship and startup and just the startup world. So just to begin with, I will just give you guys an idea of what Startup XS is. And Startup XS is an online searchable database that contains profiles of thousands of donor organizations providing funding, events, and training located in over 100 countries, providing support to startups and social enterprises working all over the world. Startup XS team gathers convenient tools and quality data in a single website so that you can find the latest opportunities at your fingertips. So please don't forget to subscribe to Startup XS after this webinar. It's such a great organization, and I'm really excited about what they're doing, and I'm looking forward to working with them, in the future. So today's webinar is about why you need to build a business, not a product. And I thought this was a very interesting topic because most of the time we don't really know the difference between a product or a business, right? And that is something that I'll go into in the next few minutes. So just to begin, so just a bit background about myself. So if you are in the first webinar, which is okay, I apologize if I'm repeating myself, but so I actually went to Babson College. It's based in Wesley, Massachusetts, in the United States, and I completed my MBA in 2019. And I later on did a Master's of Science in Finance in 2020, which was a one-year program. I was lucky enough to be the first Camtech Babson Innovation Fellow in 2017. I went to Uganda and I was really fortunate to work with some amazing entrepreneurs in Uganda, in Barara, and they were mostly healthcare startups, and as well as early stage companies that were trying to work on specifically healthcare problems, and just working them on marketing, business strategy, and understanding that business models was something that I was really fortunate to just be part of that. With a friend of mine from the MBA program, we co-founded this company called Proof the Consulting. It's still an ongoing platform that we're building, and it's a one-stop shop to validate your business and get the partnership you need to move to the next level. So this is something that I'm really excited about, and something that we're actually working on moving forward. The other company that I've founded is called Germany Corporate Group, and what we do is providing funding to startups and for creating jobs and having a social impact in Africa, and we're beginning in Uganda as our first stop. So several ventures that I've been passionate about and working on in the meantime. So this is just a really exciting time to be working on this. So just to go into the presentation now, one thing that I think is very interesting to actually start with what I think of. Just 1 second. Yeah. So it'll be three parts of this presentation. So one is product matters. The second is product versus business, and the last thing is why business. So just to give a framework of this. So I'm not saying product is not necessary. What I'm saying is that for the long term of you as an entrepreneur or a potential business owner, we have to always be thinking about how do we build a product for a long term strategy, and business is the best way to actually build something that will last longer, and something that you actually build a brand around yourself. So this presentation is not to say a product doesn't matter at all. You just give an idea of like a business is a better approach than just focusing on a product. So I'll go right into next. So the next phase is like, so this one is just to give, so as I said earlier, so this is more about the importance of product, right? So product is very simple. It's something that if you do understand what you're building, it's just a straightforward process, right? It's monolithic. What I mean by monolithic is once you understand what your product is, you can basically know this is all you need to be able to grow your able to sell. It's always just buy and sell. You don't have to think about anything else, right? Something that I actually worked on this summer was actually to sell a mask. When the pandemic hit, I was lucky enough to connect with a classmate of mine from Babson as well, and we decided to sell masks. And it was just very straightforward. People want masks, people need masks. You just provide them with masks and they buy it. So monolithic is also a linear process. So it serves just one purpose, and you actually just solve what people need. As a result of that as well, there's a value proposition to it, right? And what I mean by that is, I don't know why this is here. So what I mean by that is, it's important that you think of value proposition of a product as, a straightforward process. You don't have to think a lot about it. It's a process that you just have to, you just buy and sell. And that's the essence of monolithic, right? And there's always an easy feedback, right? Once you have a product, the goal of just buy and sell, it's just easy to get feedback, right, from what you're selling. So it's a very straightforward process. And that is why product matters, because when you're always starting out, understanding the concept of just a one-on-one street, so you sell something, someone buys something, it's just a very easy mathematics to do, right? And there's not a lot of intricate systems that might make things complicated, right? So that is why product by itself is always necessary. It's a good starting point. It gives you a point of reference, and it always helps you. If you just think about a point A to point B, which I think for every entrepreneur or a potential business person, you always have to think about what's the simplest basic step that I need to start my business, right? So having this product approach and understanding that product matters is very necessary as you successfully build your business. So just going straight into what the difference between product and services. So this is just very important, right? And this is something that it goes right now into the really needy of this presentation, and something that I really wanted to focus on. So one thing about a product is that in all cases, it's always just an item, right? If you're selling a mask, if you're selling a shoe, or if you're selling a cup, or you're selling pickles, it can also be a service, right? So it doesn't have to always be something that you can feel and touch. It can actually be something that it's a SaaS service, or something that is online, right? Like video games or apps that people make. But in most instances, products are always, or in some cases, products are always a short-term result-oriented service, right? Because once you think of a product, it's always about, I just want to make something really cool, or I want to make something that people need, and I just sell it to people, right? So it's always a one-on-one dynamic, right? So not all the time, but most of the time, products are always short-term. And the other thing about product is that you don't really need a system. So what I mean by system is that you don't really need to get maybe some people use like Asana, or some people use like Amazon Web Services. Some people use like an email listserv and all that, which I mean is important, but you don't necessarily need it. You just need to find the market, you sell the product, and that's it, right? So it's always a one-on-one or a sell and buy approach. So a system, like trying to build a team that can actually build have different roles to play, is critical, but to some aspect you don't really need it once you have a product, once you're just selling just a product. But a business is more of like, you need more of a system in place. It's necessary, you can't escape it, which is what is on the right side, or to the left side of you, to your right side. Business is a platform. It's something that you have to think about. What is the vision of this? What's the brand of this? You have to incorporate different integral services. You have to actually build a team in some cases. You actually have to have something like the Amazon Web Services that can help with marketing, with strategy. Beyond that, and you also have to think about what is the next phase of this. So sometimes people just think about not just one product, but you have to also sell like 2 or 3, 4 products, because a business is you understand from an approach of a customer satisfaction base, rather than just saying that I will just sell just one item to them. So in summary, a business is more of a series of products you're selling, but you also have to understand the psychology of a customer, that a customer doesn't necessarily need just one product, but there are other things that are surrounding a customer's need, right? And I'll give an example in the next slide that will help clarify this, right? So product is very simple. It's just a straight one-to-one process, one item or one service. But business is like, you're trying to understand the psychology of the customer. So you're trying to offer several needs of what that customer wants. And it's always a long-term result that you're always thinking about, because you want this customer to be around for a really, really long time. And you're building a business that is just beyond yourself, but more about an ecosystem that you're trying to satisfy. And it's very important for you to have a system necessary and expected. It's definitely expected, versus a product, which is always sometimes a short-term results-oriented idea or projection. And sometimes you don't really need a system, but it's in some cases it's expected. So for just now giving that clarification, something that an example that I'll try to give you guys is Facebook is actually a business, right? Once Facebook started, it was actually a service, right? It was just connecting people. But over time, it became a business because just trying to go back to the last slide, the business is more about creating a platform, right? And now, if you don't know, Facebook owns WhatsApp, it owns Instagram, and there's Facebook Messenger, and they also have Oculus, and all these other, just not just software products, but also hardware products. And I think, on the case I'll try to make in the next slide, is that once you have a business, there is the ability for you to understand the customer more in depth. You're able to build more intricate systems, and you're able to actually build something that lasts for a really long time. Versus a product where an example that I gave you is Kodak. Kodak was a company that actually, unfortunately, went out of business because you had smartphones that came out with their own cameras, right? So the benefit of just having a business is that you actually can grow with your customer. You actually solve a customer need that is larger than just one product or service, right? And I use Facebook here and with all these ads as a very good example, because I look at Facebook as, just beyond, sharing information or giving an update about your life, or using Instagram for pictures or Messenger to communicate with friends and loved ones. The premise of Facebook is to understand the psychology of people, right? And I think that's really important if you want to be an entrepreneur for the long term, right? It's not just the communications that are more concerned or that are very interested. Is they're trying to understand how people behave, right? And I think that's why I built products that in some way has led to us using all the services, right? We continue to use Facebook, continue to use WhatsApp, and if you have, and one thing that you realize that beyond the messaging and the communications on WhatsApp, they've actually built other business services, so you can actually buy stuff on Facebook now. There's Facebook Marketplace. There's actually Facebook. There's actually a WhatsApp payment system that I think it rolled out this year. And if you think about it, they had a long-term strategy. They had built systems in place beyond just the Facebook application, but they built systems in place that, as people like us as customers, have been plugged into the system, so that we are not just communicating with each other, but actually, we're able to share information with each other. We're able to send money through each other. We're able to sell things through Facebook, and that's the essence for business. And just going back to the previous slide for some clarification, Facebook is a long-term result, right? They think about the psychology of the customer, versus the product is just like like Kodak, for example, which I'll just talk a little bit about it. It was very short-term, right? And even though you could buy Kodak on Amazon and other web services, as a product, it was not really system-oriented, right? And I think that by itself is the difference between having a platform versus having a product. And so just talk a little bit about Kodak. So it was a very great company. They actually had a very high valuation, and because they were not thinking from a more business perspective, it was really hard for them to actually succeed, especially in a very dynamic system post 2000, right? When companies were able to create online platforms and they're able to think more of how can they satisfy a customer's need from a very diverse perspective, not just necessarily building one item that will go for a long haul. So I think this is like the value proposition of my presentation. Is like, once you're always building something, always think about a business, think from a business perspective rather than just building an ideal product, because we live in a very dynamic society now that it's important for us to realize that businesses are at the front of how we have to satisfy customers' needs for a really long term, how to understand the value proposition of customers for a really long term, how to understand customer valuation, but also how to plug in customers into a system that will be able to satisfy their needs for a really long time, right? So this is the argument I'm trying to make here. Whatever you're trying to build, always think about how can the product become a business, and for that reason, try to think about how do you strategize in a way that your business satisfy a customer's need beyond just that product, right? And from what I'm going to say in the next slide, it's going to try to give you an idea of how to build a business versus how to build just a product. And it's one thing. So this slide is trying to explain why a business, and the reason for that is a business is more of a brand, right? And a product can be a brand for sure, but when you're always building a business, you have to always think about how do people envision your business? What do people think of your business before you even mention the name of your business, right? So, for example, if you talk about Apple, people would say Apple is a very not the Apple phone, the iPhone, and the Mac computers. People think about something like slick, something that is very, it has very good visuals, something that is, high end, high branding, high end in terms of like just it's expensive, but also like it puts in a certain pedigree in the society, and so. That by itself it takes it out of just a product. It gives more of like a big picture of what you envision in the world, right? The same thing when you think about Google, right? It's not just a search engine. People don't just always think of search engine. People think about this company that is striving to make information accessible everywhere in the world, right? So I think building from a business perspective is for me makes more sense because you're actually giving people the idea to think more than just a product, right? The second thing is like business is always a process, right? And I think processes are by itself necessary for anything. You always have to go through a process to create something that's meaningful. For a product, you don't really need to go through a process. You can actually just itemize something. So you can just build something very quickly, and you can find, depending on the scale of what you're building or what you're creating, you can do a short-term service that doesn't require a process, and that's okay and that's fine. And some people succeed with that approach, and it's okay. But I do think that if you want to actually do something that is really much more meaningful and much more long-term, business provides you with the process, which I think is very important for any successful thing to occur, right? And so there's a lot of planning, there's a lot of methodology that's involved, but it's also a lot of a step-by-step process that by itself I think is very important to always value and also implement. And this will not just only help you build a successful business, but it also helps you in your life as an entrepreneur, right? Because once you always think of that, a process-minded approach, it just helps you a lot, and also helps you build something that can last for a long time. And the third thing is that business is dynamic, right? So business by itself provides you to think in a different approach that gives you different perspectives. It gives you an ability to also build products that will last beyond one session, right? It helps you to diversify. It helps you to build complementary products, because business by itself, you're understanding the customer's psychology. It's not just satisfying the customer needs at the point X or at the time Y. You're actually trying to build something that over time customers are able to buy, but also able to relate to what you're trying to build, and actually trying to understand and help you actually envision a world that you think is what the world needs right now, right? And when you always think about I'll still give Facebook as an example. When you always talk about Mark Zuckerberg's approach on the world, he's saying that the world has to be connected. And when we use Facebook or Instagram or WhatsApp, we actually buy into that philosophy, right? We're trying to connect with others. And I think that makes it very dynamic compared to if you just focus on building Facebook, right? Because over time, people actually start using more of WhatsApp and Instagram than Facebook. But if Zuckerberg didn't think of Facebook as a business, he couldn't have been able to build something that is more dynamic and actually provide a series of apps that will actually satisfy our needs over time.
Get that. Could you try again?
Sorry about that. So, and the last thing is a business is a platform, right? Because it actually helps you build something that can last for a really long time. And a platform by itself is, as I've explained earlier, is you have to build systems in place, which I think is very critical than just a one-to-one communication that most products actually uh, just having a product by itself is not really needed. But having that platform kind of what I mean by platform is building a team, having a system in place where you can actually do some marketing, do some strategy, and also do a lot of organization. I think that by itself is very important and critical as we actually build a product into a business. And I think that is actually helpful as for early stage entrepreneurs, such that even if you are not there, the platform is in place for you to actually continue to market your product or series of products that you have. Um, and the last phase of this presentation, until I go into the questions, is just to understand of why business again, right? And I think these are very important because it helps us just understand why we should be thinking from a business standpoint rather than just from a product standpoint. And the first thing I will say is interconnection, right? Products and services are interconnected. Once they're always selling one product, even if people buy it and it's of high value, over time there can be another product that will be much more better than it. Uh, the product you're selling has to be used with another product in some cases, right? When you always build a business, you understand the cross section of why you need the interconnectedness of products and services, right? And just the reality of the world, but also the reality of business. Just using this laptop, there are many things I had to use in connection with this laptop, right? I had to use on internet. I had to make sure that my microphone is working and all that. But as a business, you always think about the interconnection of businesses, products and services, right? And they always work uh, alongside each other, right? So that is something that is very important. And if you're building a business, it actually helps you to think about in a critical way how to actually understand the interconnectedness of products and services, and a business will give you that benefit of a doubt compared to just selling one product. The second important thing is risk averse. It's not always 100% risk averse, but if you're always thinking of building a business, you always have the opportunity to do something else, right? Just take for instance, if you just had one product and let me say you take it out to the market and people don't, I mean, you didn't get the right response, right? You actually did your market research, you did your market segmentation, and you did your market positioning. So market segmentation just means you try to figure out who are the potential customers that can buy a product. Or market positioning, where you actually say, okay, this is the right type of person that I need to sell a product to, the right group of people I need to sell a product to, and people don't buy it. Then what happens? Your product will not sell, and you might just go out of, in quotes, business. But if you build a business with a business approach or business mindset, you know that you're creating a platform where people you're understanding the customer psychology, right? So from the onset, you're actually building something that if it doesn't work out, you can actually diversify your resources into something else that people need. There's room for you getting feedback and actually building something that scales out of that is different from what you initially thought people needed, right? So in some way, it helps mitigate risk, right? And it just gives you that opportunity to actually reflect, take a step back, and think of what's the other products or what are the different products that I can be thinking about, such that if this one fails, I can try this other one for the products and for what people need, right? And a third thing that I think is very important for us as we think about businesses versus product is that, you know, because businesses have systems in place, systems actually provide better insights to customer behavior and future trends. Once we always sell products, we always just think about how can we sell better. But if we're building a business, always think about what are some of the customer behaviors. Our mindset is in that space, so it helps us provide us as a potential business owner or entrepreneur of how to think of opportunities, not just trying to sell a single product, but what are the opportunities now and in the future, right? And I think that by itself is very critical as entrepreneurs or people that want to actually help people, in the long term, right? And I think that by itself is very critical and very important. Um, Once we think about um, ourselves as business owners versus just selling a single product. So, in summary, the whole premise of the case I'm trying to make here is that for products, you always have to think about um, it's a one-way conversation. It's a one-way thing. But businesses are better because of these three main reasons, but also all the other reasons I've mentioned earlier in this presentation. And it's just very important that um, we think of businesses more from the viewpoint of building systems, right? Trying to mitigate risk in some regard, but also trying to understand that from a business standpoint, you understand the interconnectedness of services as well as products, right? And it puts in a better place to actually build something for the long term while understanding the need for branding, which I think is very important in this day and age as entrepreneurs, right? So I think that's it for my presentation today. Thank you guys very much for listening to the webinar. And I really appreciate the fact that you guys were patient enough and kind enough to listen to the whole presentation. But that's the premise of what this presentation was about. Or just give an idea of why you should think from a business standpoint rather than just from a product standpoint. And you should do that early on. You shouldn't wait after um, you know the product fails, or you should be thinking about it as an entrepreneur from a very very early stage. And hopefully this presentation helped you to have that mindset. And I'm open for questions. So just to begin, we had some questions that were submitted prior to this presentation, and I'll just read some of them and answer them right away. And if you have more questions, I think the team at the back end will be able to forward that to me. But I'll just go through some questions that were asked prior to this presentation. So a question came from Tana from India, Tanya Singh from India, and she asked, she said, "This is Tana from India. I'm a home-based company producing homemade pickles. My products are sold directly online only. How do I create a company out of it?" So this is a great question. By the way, congrats on building these amazing home-based pickles. So what I will say is that, as what I've mentioned, for building a product, you have to always think about how do you understand your customer, right? It's a customer psychology thing rather than just making these homemade pickles, right? And I think one good thing that based on the presentation I made was try to build systems in place such that your customers are able to not just buy the pickles but actually have a reason to come back, right? And I think that by itself is how you build a business, right? Something that is critical is, as you're selling these pickles, think of, okay, how can I differentiate the pickles? Ask for feedback from your customers, right? And try to get a sense of, can I actually make pickles with different flavors? Can I actually make pickles with, do I just need bland pickles? Do I need pickles with something added to it? But you can only get that by asking your customers. Try to have that relationship with your customers. And from then, you can actually start doing more differentiations, right? You don't just make one type of pickles. You make various differentiated forms of pickles, right? And from there, you can actually have now multiple products. And that by itself, it's a good start of building the business, if that makes sense, right? Another thing about building a business is that you also actually have to, in most cases, you need a team, right? So try to also find people that are interested or excited about pickles and are passionate about people eating pickles, right? And try to bring them on your team, and bring people of different different skill sets, but also different just viewpoints and perspectives of how a potential pickle business can be at, right? So just think about it from that perspective, and also most importantly, actually just try to build beyond the online sales. And I know with COVID and all that, it's really challenging to do something otherwise, but just try to find other streams of marketing, but also other streams of how to sell your pickles, right? Because you can actually reach out to other customers just beyond online. But I know from now with COVID, you can just sell online for health and safe reasons, which I think is very important. But think of it as understanding customer need, try to do some diversification of your product, and that the way you can do that is actually to ask your customers, how do you relate to your product, how do you feel about your product, and I think that will help you start the differentiation process, and ultimately you can build business for the long term. So, great question. All the best in your business, and I think that's a very great business you're doing. So, thanks for the question. The second question comes from Rajiv Gurung from Nepal, and his story is that we are producing COVID mask and face shield and looking for funding to increase production. Before we were supported by the local donor, but now it's stopped. What solution do you have for us who are innovators but lacking funding? So, Rajiv, this is a really great question, and thanks for asking this question. So, COVID mask and face shield is a very for our times, it's highly needed. We want people to be safe and healthy, and I think it's a great work you're doing. So, when COVID actually hit, especially in the US, March, April of this year, something that we faced here in the United States was that there were really lack of mask or face shield, right? So to get something like that, it was premium price, right? We had to think of what is the price is really high because there were very few of them, right? But now, and I think maybe in India or Nepal, sorry, these are flooded over the place, right? Because people caught up to the demand, right? People were able to make more masks, people were able to make more face shield, and that, for a fact, created a lot of competition. I think maybe you're facing some competition, and maybe that is why local donors. You can't have this as much funding as local donors as time passed, right? So one thing I would suggest is actually there are three things that you can do. I think the first thing is that you can find new markets. So maybe you have to think about markets beyond Nepal. I think there's some local communities that still need mask and face shield around the area that you can think of them as opportunities where you can provide to them either through a non-profit way that if non-profit will pay for it and you provide the mask. So finding that opportunity, market opportunity. It mustn't just always be in Nepal, it can actually be out of Nepal too, right? So but just think of what is a market opportunity that's not in your surrounding that still doing mask. The second thing I'll call is bundling. So bundling basically is beyond selling COVID masks and face shield, you can actually add like hand sanitizers, right? Or add any other thing that comes, or you have like paper towels or something like that, and you actually bundle it with your COVID mask and face shield, right? So you're actually selling a package, and that by itself is actually building a very sustainable business, right? So people don't just have a face shield and a COVID mask; they know that it comes with a hand sanitizer or a towel or something like that. But if you do a packaging deal, you can actually make a better case of why you need funding, right? And you can actually find funding through that way. The third piece is actually differentiation. So differentiation is like you build a mask, but you add something different to it. You can add like a logo, you can add like trademarks, and that by itself you're creating an opportunity for people to buy, and also making a case for potential donors or local investors actually sit down and say, yes, this person is building something that's different, right? And that will present you with a better case to actually find the necessary funding that you need to continue your business. But as I said, in this presentation, if you're building a business, you have to think about differentiation, right? You have to think about the long term. So from all what I presented here, try to think about how can I build more of a platform with different products, differentiated products with the bundling and providing better market opportunities, which I think will help you to get the funding that you need. So great question, and thanks for your question. The third question is from Omar from Ghana. And Omar is the question he or she said, I didn't say he, can you differentiate with pros and cons of having a product versus a business? So this is what this presentation is about, right? The pros of a product is simple, it's straightforward, it's monolithic, you can actually just know, you understand the value proposition of your product very quickly, you can get feedback very quickly. The cons is that if people don't need your product anymore, you're going to go out of business, you can lose a lot of money if there's a lot of capital invested early on. And in some cases, because of the lack of system, you can actually not be able to averse a risk that, in most instances, businesses have that upper hand, right? So this is more, systems are very businesses, the pros of business like that are also very important in terms of the ability to just give you the understanding of the customer psychology, right? Which I think is very critical, and that helps a lot in the long term. The cons are that business, you need to be able to think in the long term, right? And that goes with a lot of ups and downs. You have setbacks, you have good times, but you always have to think on the long term, and so that's sometimes very difficult for some people, right? You might not do well in the beginning, but in the long term you can do really well. So you have to be there for the long game. It's a long term investment. So and it's just so hard to manage, right? Sometimes you do with a lot of products, a lot of services, sometimes a lot of clients, as well as a lot of employees, right? So there's a lot that you have to do with at the same time, and that it can be difficult psychologically, but overall, I'll pick a business over a product. So thanks for your question. The next question is from Carl from the Philippines. And the question is, does creating a business mean we have to register an organization and give employment? What are the key factors that we need to cater when building a business? So when you're creating a business, I'll highly encourage you to register the business, right? It just makes things much more authentic. It makes it more trustworthy, and people just value that more. I mean, you want your business to be very trustworthy. You want your business to have a face, and sometimes being recognized by the government is a very good way to just show that you're a very trustworthy, authentic business that is providing a high quality product or service, right? So I would highly suggest that if there's a need for the company to be registered, and you have the opportunity to register it, and in most countries it's not that expensive to register a company, and I would say go for it. I think it just makes your branding right, and it just makes it better. So I would suggest that is the ideal way to go. So in most instances, businesses which are platforms, you need to register the organization, and I'll highly suggest you do that. For employment, I would say it depends on the need, right? You want to hire people that are able to fulfill a certain job requirement, and are able to build something. They're able to join a business and provide results. So the employment is very relative, and you also want to make sure that most of the businesses that you're building, the employers understand the vision of the business. They are very passionate about what you're trying to build. So employment comes from a need-based approach, right? And I think that's very critical once you're hiring people for your business. So think about it from a need-based perspective. Don't just hire because you need to hire. Think about it. If the business is growing, that is why I need to hire people based on the need. But in most cases, you do need, especially if the business is growing very quickly, hire people that have high potential to build a business. So what are the key factors that we need to cater when building a business? So key factor is having someone who can make decisions, someone who can work independently, and someone who has the right skill sets to actually understand what he or she is trying to build when the person is on your team, right? For a very, a business is different from like an early stage company, because for an early stage company, most of the time, you have very few individuals that are doing almost the same thing. Some people can have, a specific skill set, like the tech guy or the business development guy, but and sometimes they wear the same hat, because we always have to think about how can we maximize our talent for a very short period of time to produce the high quality outcome. And there's not a lot of capital to begin with, so we hire the least amount of people to do the most amount of work. But for a business, to some degree, you probably have built a product market. So there's a product that you built, it has like a market fit, and you have gone beyond um, the threshold phase. So you're not just on a survival mode, you're actually trying to make profit. So you have some capital that you can run on of. So you always have to think about who are the people that are just very efficient in their work, they're coachable, they're able to understand the business from a psychological point of view, from a very long term point of view, but they're also willing to work together as a team, right? So finding the right people, that's human capital. Understanding the need of just the finance when it's needed. So understanding the fundamentals of finance, and last but most importantly, understand how to build the vision of the business system in a systematically process. So building a system that over time you know when to invest capital, not necessarily trying to build something quickly or too slowly. Like understand the system of a business, and I think that is very very important from a key factor perspective of how to cater to a business when building a business. So thanks for your question. That was a very good question, and I hope that helped you to understand human capital is important, finance is important, but also building a system is important. So the next question is from Samila from Nepal, and he's asking, the question is there a difference between entrepreneurship, an entrepreneur and a businessman, and how can you start your own business without a product? So I'll answer the last part of the question. So most of the time, you need a product to start a business, right? It's really hard to say, you can, um, a business has to have a product, right? So, it's just the mindset. So, I mean, the premise of this presentation is like once you're always starting something, think of a business mindset rather than just a product mindset, right? So, I would suggest that I wouldn't think it's possible to start a business without a product. You always have to have a product. Then once you understand the psychology of what you're trying to build from a business perspective, you always have that product either differentiated or in a bundle form or satisfy the needs of of your customers from different perspectives from that product, and build an add-on and all that. So you always need a product to start a business. So that's the last part of your question. The difference between an entrepreneur and business is very interesting. So entrepreneurs most of the time they take a lot more risk. They are more high risk individuals, and you always have to be very keen to opportunities. You always have to see insights as an entrepreneur early on than anybody else, and you can train yourself to do that. A businessman in most cases is someone that already has something that's ongoing, and you're just trying to maximize the opportunities on that ongoing project or business that's already been put in place. But in general, entrepreneurs are just high risk individuals compared to businessmen. But just a point, entrepreneur and businessman can be the same person, right? An entrepreneur will actually build a business and eventually become a businessman, right? So it can actually be one person. It's just like the entrepreneur just takes more risk. Businessmen, in most instances, they already have something that's ongoing. They mostly manage people. They can just be good managers, right? But entrepreneur has to have someone that is someone that actually has an idea, and the idea can become materialized into a business, right? So entrepreneurs are just high risk individuals, and they can build stuff, right? So great question. The next question is from Sophie from Tanzania, and she said, I'm working with a team of 4, and we now a small scale business producing customized t-shirts, and most of our sales is through Instagram. How do you suggest we handle roles in the business that changes over time while building the business within the team? How important is it to build a business system to build a business, right? So great work you're doing, Sophie, from Tanzania. And customized t-shirts and all that. That's pretty amazing. Instagram is a very good way to sell, and I think using social media for stuff like that is very ideal for our time. So great approach to selling your product. And so our question is, how do we suggest we handle roles in the business? So one thing that is critical, especially for early stage businesses, is that you need to be able to understand. I don't know whether Sophie is the CEO, but you need to be able to understand what people are good at and what people are not good at, right? And it's very, very important early on to be able to sit down as a team and talk to each and have a conversation. If you're the CEO, Sophie, of just understanding where people are good at, where people are not good at, and clearly putting on specific roles based on what people are good at, right? And making sure that they understand that that is their role, and they should be able to do it well without a lot of micromanaging, right? Giving them the confidence that they are in control of that specific job in the startup, and they have the right to do what they want to do in that role. And there's always like a phase of entrepreneurship and when you're building your business. So for the early stage founders or the founding team are people that they have a specific skill that is really good, and but at the same time they're able to work with their co-founders, and most importantly they understand the mission and the vision of the company. So that's for early stage companies. When companies begin to grow, you need people with specific skill sets, and they can just do the work really well without a lot of micromanaging, right? So I don't know how early you are, Sophie, but at this point, you need people that understand the mission and vision of the company really well. They are coachable, and they have a specific skill set they can do by themselves. But most importantly, they're able to work with the founding team members because there has to be some chemistry for businesses to succeed, especially very early on. So that's so the roles is related is based on the skill set of each individual, but they also have to be able to complement each other very importantly. I did a webinar with this amazing startup XX that I talked about the major pitfalls of early stage entrepreneurs, and one of the things was team dynamics, right? Team dynamics is very critical. So you always have to think about how your roles are differentiated, but at the same time complementary to each other. You guys don't always have to have the same personality. It doesn't have to be your best friend or all that, but you just need someone who understands the vision of the company as you do, has skill sets that complement yours, and is willing and able to learn from mistakes and is coachable enough. So that's how you build your roles around that and make sure that they complement each other. So how important is it to build business systems? It's very important. As I said earlier, right, it helps you understand how to grapple with feedback, how to differentiate your product, how to maximize on an already existing product. And I think all that is very fundamental in building a successful business. Without that, you're just having a product, right? So I'll just say it again, systems are necessary and are expected for businesses because that helps you provide the necessary feedback and also build new products or differentiated products that will serve your customers, right? We have a question from Aaron. I think we're almost an hour now. Aaron from Bangladesh. He said, I think we are selling a product for a business. So first, I better know or get ideas about a product to sell in the market and make a strategy for business. Am I thinking the right way? So Aaron, that's great. First of all, you always need to get ideas. It's just market research, right? And build a strategy around your business. That is the right way of thinking. So you're definitely right. If you don't gather ideas, you will just build something that maybe people don't need. And secondly, you also said strategizing. Strategizing is very critical because if you just build ideas and try to sell the product without strategizing, you definitely fail, right? You need a very good strategy in order to understand what you have to do now versus what you have to do in the next 3 months, in the next 9 months, or the next 6 months, right? So strategy is very critical. Market research is very fundamental. Everything has to start with market research and market positioning. Then from there you come with a strategy. So great job. That's the right way of thinking, and definitely that's also a great way of building a business. So these are the questions I have for now. I don't know if there are any more questions from you guys online, but so far very great questions, and I think that's what we have for now. But thank you guys for your amazing questions. Thank you guys for listening to this webinar. I want to thank everyone at Startup Access. I don't know if there are any more questions, but I really appreciate the time And I hope you guys learned something from this webinar. And please feel free to reach out. And please, I'm really grateful again for this organization, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity that was provided to me here. And I hopefully will talk to you guys soon for another webinar. But thank you so much. Thanks to the team, and thanks for the very amazing questions. And just to summarize, business is better than a product because there are a lot of benefits: risk aversion. You can become very dynamic. You can build other products that you definitely understand the psychology of customers. And most importantly, you're thinking on the long term, which I think is very important for branding. Versus a product, it can be simple, it can be monolithic, but you're always there for the short term. So I think businesses are the right way to go, and based on the questions you guys ask, you guys understand what it means to grow a successful business. So good luck to you guys. Please stay safe and be well, and hopefully be in touch. So thank you so much. Thank you so much to the team. Take care.